The Dr. Ray Podcast is a co-production of Ave Maria Radio and EWTN Radio. Here's today's monologue with Dr. Ray Guarendi.
I dated a girl a few times when I was 24. I was in grad school. She and I were discussing something, and she said, "Oh, don't go all psychologist on me." I thought about that. I thought, how can I not? There's not two parts of me. There's not Ray the non-psychologist and Ray the psychologist. I mean, the way I think is intertwined with my life as a psychologist. That's kind of sort of how I look at things. I don't think I overanalyze them, but I'm prone to speculate. And I have something that I've been speculating on that I want to share with you, which I think, if I were to speculate, is going to get me some email. And I'm not sure it's going to be nice email. But you see what you think. I was in the airport the first day after the mask mandate was lifted by TSA, by the government. And I was curious to see how many people were basically wearing a mask because they were told to, and how many were wearing a mask simply because they thought it was the best thing to do. And I noticed that about 80% immediately stopped wearing a mask. Not 80, about 20% still did. I looked at the sex ratio, and I noted that two to three times more women were in masks than men. I also noticed that predominantly of the women wearing masks, the majority, perhaps the vast majority, were under 35. Fast forward till last week. Again, I was in the airport. I go to the airport a lot. It had been, several months since the mask mandate. I noticed one of two things. It depends upon which airport. I was in some airports on the West Coast, and they definitely were more masked up than airports in Cleveland. But I noticed something more significant, and of course I was going to analyze it. About 5%, I would say, maybe a little less, people were still wearing masks in the airport. It's their business. Still goes with what I said 3 years ago, or not quite, when I said there's going to be a certain percentage of people who are going to be very scared, very nervous, very unsure of themselves in crowds. The ratio of women to men, as best I could generally analyze it, was about 6-1. And of that 6-1, still mostly under 35. Now, the psychologist in me, or just the thinker in me, just a person in me, was speculating, why would this be? What is it that the ratio of women to men wearing masks was about 6-1? And, of course, most of them were younger. Well, first of all, by the data, under age 35, you're at very low risk for COVID seriousness. Very low. And there was a survey done that said that the under 35 age group had the most squeamishness, ill at ease, fear about COVID than any age group, including the old folks. So why women? Well, there's a body of research in psychology that says men are naturally inclined, as a group, these are all generalizations, to be more risk takers. They're more likely to not be as uncertain about risky situations. They're more likely to head into them. Okay, and that's why, in a lot of respects, that's why Army's been composed of men. And that's why, guys, if you spend any time on the internet, you see guys doing all kinds of dumb things, especially if they get triple dog dared. But what would it be? What could be the reason that the ratio is that lopsided? I think that's one of them. Now, the comeback could be, Dr. Ray, I think it's because women are more nurturant and caring. They just feel like they want to protect others. They don't want to get something that they can carry and transmit on to someone else. All right, I'll acknowledge that, but I do not think that's the main reason. I believe, because it was the under 35 age group, that's the group that generally, at least if you look at every other survey, has been most swayed by the media reports and by what kind of news they watch and how they look at things. And they are the least religious group in our culture, that they would be the ones most nervous about the reverberations of the COVID illness or response. Don't believe me? Go to the airport. Count it for yourself. I find it a fascinating thing. It's a demographic study. So, given that, I was just fascinated. There were still people wearing masks. They can do what they want. They can wear them if they want, but it's been about 3 years, close to it. And, of course, the research with masks is really, at the very least, especially cloth masks, is, for the most part, if you want to give it the best case scenario, is inconsistent. Worst case scenario, it's pretty much useless. So what is it about that you had that ratio? And I think it reflects. I think it reflects that there's a certain cohort, that's what we shrinks call it, it's a group, a cohort type of thinking that is shaped by what media you listen to, what your particular generation approaches life like, and I think that was reflected in what I saw. Now, you can think I'm full of beans. I'm just telling you what I saw. And you can say, well, your speculation is way off. Okay, go ahead. You won't bother me by saying that, unless you give me a nasty email. But I got to tell you, when I get a nasty email, I really got to assess it. I ask myself one question. Is this a good point? Is this person making a good point? Because I owe it to them to consider what they're saying. If I think it's not, then as soon as I push delete, it's out of my head. Okay, it takes about 6 seconds longer. It's out of my head. But, in fact, I think that you may notice that even outside the airport, the ratio.
More of Dr. Ray's Manologues can be found on his website, drray.com. Manologues, as well as full-length programs of The Doctor Is In, can be heard at AveMariaRadio.net and EWTN.com/radio.